Resilience, otherwise known as a survivor mindset, is a will to survive. This particular mindset drives a person to instinctively improvise, adapt, and overcome. Some seem to have this mindset a little bit more than others, but what I can assure you is that we're all born with it. In this episode, we will answer a question from a listener, which will speak to this state of mind and how we can tap into that inner strength. Stick with us. This one's going to be an educational one.
Are you ready?
You are now tuned in
An informed state of mind. The main takeaway is that you just stop and have to wait. 2009, I made the decision to get out. Family, we got out. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to ISOM, an informed state of mind. I'll be your host, Luke. Appreciate everybody stopping back into the podcast. And it's getting a lot of attention, which we're happy about for sure. We've got it posted over there on X, and we're picking up some listeners over there, which is good. And again, we're on a few different platforms, not just Spotify, of course. So whatever your favorite podcast is, check out ISOM, AISOM. Of course, if you found us here, you know how to find us. And like I said, we appreciate the listen. Minus 21 degrees today. I'm going to jump right into it and talk about how bloody cold it is. And this is normal for northern Canada for sure. Especially this time of year, we started getting into a little bit more adverse weather, more cumulative snowfalls. And we did a podcast a few weeks ago talking about just that. And that was a state of emergency declared. And now what? We actually got a question from a listener off that way, Ben Cross, and he actually asked a pretty detailed question here, and we're going to do our best to actually address that question because I think that we're all going to have some good takeaways from this, and maybe some things that we're going to realize about ourselves, and that's just the hope, and leave it with a bit more of an informed state of mind. So before we get into that question, standing out in the living room there, was looking out the back of the house towards the lake, and it's a nice stretch, down to the water through a forest, a big pathway, if you would, down to the forest. You can see straight down. It's beautiful, no doubt. We're very fortunate we have the property. So watching some birds come into the bird feeder that we got set up out back, and just seeing the resilience that these birds have in the minus 21, and they seem to be pretty happy playing with each other through the trees. Actually, a squirrel was over on one of the birch trees. He's in the background doing his thing, and he'll find some of the sunflower seeds that are in that bird feed for sure that the birds will leave behind, at least these smaller ones. But, it got me to thinking that they're so resilient. How did they get that, right? Well, it goes back to the idea that we're born with it. There's no doubt about that. And of course, when you're exposed to anything and you have to make it part of your life, it's or your everyday life, you become a master at it to some degree, like walking. We could all suggest that we're absolutely masters at walking. So what else can we master, right? And so when we talk about being resilient, it is a state of mind, there's no doubt, but it's something that we can actually improve on tenfold, without a doubt. And the more informed you are, the more well-practiced you are, the better off your resilience will be. So let's get back to Ben Cross's question. And he, again, commented on an earlier podcast, state of emergency declared, now what? And that was Nova Scotia just being slammed with snow. 4 feet in about 48 hours, maybe less. We got our share up this way here in northern Canada, and in our province, we got slammed with maybe a little bit over 3 feet in a shorter period of time. It didn't put us into a state of emergency, but it certainly slowed us down. Shut down town for the most part. Most businesses weren't open, and it took us another couple of days to kind of dig out that much of it, and where do you put the snow? So like I said, we'll add a couple of pictures in here so you can kind of get a feel for what it's looking like right now. But we're in a bit of a lull with the weather, so that's good news. And we do have another front coming in. We'll get some more snow, probably 10 to 20 centimeters. And south of us, we're going to probably get a little bit of rain in there. So again, everybody's going to have to be resilient towards that weather and make good choices, which again involves a good plan, right? So we're going to talk a bit about that today as well. But again, Ben asked that question, and he puts it to us like this, and it's a fairly detailed question. How do you balance practical preparedness with maintaining a positive and resilient mindset, especially in the face of the often overwhelming information surrounding potential emergencies and disasters? It's a really a great question. And I think a lot of people have, honestly, have become a little bit complacent. They know that the storm is coming. They think, yeah, we're probably going to be okay. But again, as a colleague had asked me at work, he says, what would happen if the grid went down or the electricity shut off, during that snowmageddon that we kind of took place in here with. And I said, a lot of people would be in trouble. There's no doubt. Is there enough warming centers? Come to find out, I did a little bit of research on that. In our particular local area, let's just say you couldn't stay in your home because it was a 48 to 72-hour shutdown. This is when it comes back to that 72-hour kit that we talked about in that podcast. You could grab that and go, and it would accent whatever you and your family or loved ones might need if you had to go to a warming center. There's not actually a lot of prepared warming centers in our area. So that leaves a lot of people. I did a little bit further to figure out if I could find some data on how many people are actually exclusively on electric form of heating, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So, that would be quite a disaster if that took place. Something to consider. But where lies our resiliency? Resiliency is, while we're born with it, it's not necessarily just something we can come up with. We have to be able to be proactive in creating an environment that we can be resilient in as well, to some degree. Right? Especially if we have knowledge, we might as well apply it. So let's break down that question a little bit. We're getting into talking about resiliency, and I think, like I said, everybody's going to take away a little bit something from it. It's an important topic, no doubt about it. So let's get into it here. We're going to talk about resiliency being a reactive state of mind that really emerges from exposure to suffering. To put it plainly, we'll get better at it the more that we're kind of prepared against the act of suffering. We don't want to be put in that position. So when we're faced with challenges, our minds respond by finding ways to cope, learn, and persevere. There's no doubt about that. Resilience means having the ability to respond to changes or adversity proactively, of course, and perhaps more importantly, resourcefully. So resilient individuals see themselves as, moreover, survivors, right? And so a person who has a survivor mentality persists even when things get super tough. And we know that about resilient individuals. There's no doubt about that, especially the people that are more prepared, right? So how do we maintain this, or how do we set it into action? Because it is all in, absolutely, it lies in all of us, right? But how can we refine that a little bit more? I come back to preparedness. Preparedness is everything as far as I'm concerned. It gives you the best possible odds. It allows you more time to deal with other things because you're prepared for the bulk of what may be happening in front of you. So it's the smaller details that maybe you have to provide for at that particular time. So, we want to be positive, and that's going to create a positive mindset because we feel, hey, I'm in good shape right now. It's not that bad. Where the next person who's not prepared at all is going to have a more negative mindset because they feel overwhelmed. This is all happening at once, and I didn't do anything to prepare, right? So, the better educated and more prepared you are, the more likely you will to respond accordingly to any emergency or disaster, which again is going to improve your odds and, quite frankly, limit your risks, right? We'll break this down to a couple different things. Balancing practical preparedness with maintaining a positive and resilient mindset, certainly posed from the question, can be challenging, right? Especially when you're faced with a flood of information and potential emergencies or a disaster that's already unfolded. Today we have numerous apps and websites that provide early warnings to adverse conditions that you may need to prepare for. Right? This can help reducing stressors that can manifest during those type of emergencies. Another thing we want to look at is we need to learn to be informed, right? And this creates that positive state of mind and prompts us to want to be more prepared, right? So we need to take care of ourselves in that sense. And if we're going to be able to take care of our mental health in these situations when we have more information. It's like going into an exam, for instance. You think you've got all the answers, you've studied well for it, you get in, you're still a bit nervous about it. and you face the exam, you go through it. At the end of it, you say, you know what? Hey, I feel pretty good about that. I did all right. Now imagine a person going into an exam or a test, for instance, and not having any preparation for that. The amount of anxiety that potential, especially if they care about the test that's in front of them. Now, just who knows what happened, right? To get them to that point where they never studied for the exam or the test, or that interview, for instance. If you go in there ill-prepared, you're probably not going to be as successful, right? Which is going to be, well, they can say this is going to be a risky one, right? For sure. Well, this is, again, it can be applied to everything in life. We already do this. And the majority of the people listening to this can say, yeah, I understand that completely, right? But where do you stop? And that's just it. And it is an individual choice. Some people will say in hindsight, gee whiz, I wish I would have prepared for that. I think the things would have been a little bit better. I wish I would have had a spare one on hand. So when this one broke down, I wouldn't have had to wait 2 days to be able to get the part, come through the mail, or be able to wait for a shop to open, or now into a major weather event, for instance, and everything is shut down for 2 or 3 days. Well, what are we going to do, right? It was a main breaker fuse, and we didn't have an extra one. That should have been maybe part of a risk assessment that should have been taking place to make you a bit more prepared. And again, that resiliency would be shining through. So again, we have to learn to be informed and informed correctly. Lots of apps out there, like I said, for those type of emergencies. What about the ones like an earthquake, for instance? Or if we want to get a little bit bigger than that, talk about an EMP. If we are completely off grid, how are you going to fare? Are you in a position to be able to do that? Are you in an apartment building that's a 17-floor apartment building, 18-floor apartment building, 2-floor, in a condo in the middle of the city, and everything is completely shut down? What do you do? Is there warming centers? Do you understand those centers? Are you going to be able to look it up with no internet, for instance, right? Do you already have that wrote down somewhere that's outside of your phone? Most people store everything on an electronic device now. It would behoove you to put a folder together or a book together and have that put into that 72-hour kit that we talked about, for instance, to be a little better off. Now, if you live in a smaller community, it may not be that much of a struggle, right? But if you live in a major metropolitan with 500,000, 1 million people plus, how are you going to fare? Fantasize about that a little bit, right? Try to have an idea of what that's going to look like. So what do I need to prepare against? I need to use the model. We're going to call it the informed state of mind model. We're going to coin that right now going forward. It'll make it a lot easier throughout the podcast. You're familiar with this podcast. It'll be familiar with we'll call it the ISOM model. And this will be the Assess, Plan, Act. Those 3 main fundamentals. So we're going to use that going forward. So if you follow the ISOM model, there's absolutely some strategies going to help navigate this with a delicate balance. Okay? So when we consider the Assess, Plan, Act, right, it's a powerful approach to handling pretty much any challenge, right, and making informed decisions. So let's break that down once again for those who are just catching on and, being a new listener. We're going to look at assessing, for instance. That begin by gathering information, understand the situation, and identify a problem, and evaluate its impact, right? And this is the risk assessment portion of any particular well-laid plan. We want to ask questions in that phase. We want to know what's happening. What are the risks? What resources do we have? What can we fathom that could take place? What can we imagine that could take place? What do we know from historical events, maybe in different areas, that we can learn from and put into our plan if there's a probability of something taking place? And that's part of that assessment. When we talk about the plan, that's based, of course, on your assessment. All right, we create a strategy. Right, we can sort of consider both the long and the short-term goals. We break down the plan into actionable steps. We'll prioritize tasks. We'll anticipate potential obstacles and devise contingency plans. And that's certainly important, is to have a plan B, if not a plan C, or that backup fuse, for instance, or that backup belt for a lawnmower, for instance, if that's something that you're looking at, and maybe not such a serious scale, but that extra light bulb that you put up in the cupboard. And to get down to the action portion of it, we want to be able to execute that plan. We want to take deliberate steps towards those goals that we've created in the plan, right? But we need to be adaptable, because in any real world application, we have anomalies, and they can take place. They can surprise us. Things change, right? There's other external environmental actions that can be taking place around us, right, that we don't have complete control over, we may not have knowledge about. So we need to be able to adapt, improvise, overcome. These are certainly another good trio of words to live by. So again, we need to monitor that progress when we're acting, and of course, in making necessary adjustments, which means that we're continually assessing as we go. So it is like I say, it's like an infinity symbol to be expressed instead of a circle kind of system. So that's something that's going to get us a little bit closer to our goals, and making sure that we have that resilience lying with us that's strong. We have to remember that resilience lies not only in the ability to assess and plan, but also the courage to act. And that's a big one. So we have to have that courage to say, I'm good with it. I have confidence and I can move forward. Now I can act on it, right? With that confidence, because I feel like I'm informed. I feel like I'm prepared. I've got a good plan. I've got a good plan B. So you got to trust your judgment. This will, of course, it'll keep you positive and it'll keep you moving forward. And that's a big deal. So, the assessment, respect it, give it attention, right? That model, you want to respect that and give that attention, and make that a serious point in your world on everything, So we want to find a sense of purpose in general, and purpose provides meaning and motivation, right? Instead of feeling discouraged by challenges, or having a defined purpose course was going to help you learn from past experiences, and that's going to keep you moving forward, right? So some examples of purpose, could be building a support system of loved ones, giving a voice to a social movement, or serving your community. If you've got knowledge, share that knowledge, like that we're doing here on the show. How many people is it going to reach? Don't know. But if it reaches one and it changes the dynamic of how they think, I believe that the information that we share can absolutely be a benefit. But you have to have confidence somewhere along the lines, and you got to trust that. And of course, the better the information and the better you can vet that information, the more confident you're going to build. And the more information you expose yourself to about particular topics, by nature, the more confidence you're going to have with that. And then you can go out and speak about that. When you can speak about something with some kind of intelligence, the confidence comes with that, right? And I guess, especially if your audience is giving you that positive feedback, which is what we enjoy about this show, for instance. We get that positive feedback, and we get those questions that says, hey, we can dive a little bit deeper, because there's somebody who wants to dive a little bit deeper in there and asking, well, what do we think about that? Well, we're going to go ahead and provide some of that insight. It's not to say that it's complete, and it's not to say that it's going to be for everyone, right? I think the model certainly is going to be fine when we're assessing and planning and acting. I think that's a model for everyone for sure. But how are you going to build off that? Right. So having the confidence in your abilities, trust your efforts. Confidence in that ability to cope with stress is absolutely crucial for resilience. You need to educate yourself, understand the dynamics of what you have understood, what you've considered, the most probable and emergency events, for instance. Seek out training, maintain that training. We want to replace negative self-talk with positive affirmations. Right. We want to remind yourself of the strengths and accomplishments that you have. Confidence is absolutely going to play a significant role in recovering from difficult events, or get you through those difficult events. Again, it's going to make some of the issues that may be bigger for other people a lot smaller for you, because you're prepared for it. Preparedness is so fundamental when it comes down to resiliency, right? And that absolute state of mind of being prepared. So we want to be optimistic. Positive outlook contributes to that resilience for sure. Focus on solutions rather than dwelling on the problems. So instead of sitting there, oh, this is a problem, get up and say, okay, we're finding a solution. Okay, what do we got? It's like being lost. We need to admit to ourselves, hey, I'm lost, but that's okay. Let's take an inventory of what we have. This is the part of the assessment. Let's look at the time. We're 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Nightfall is coming. I don't think I'm getting out of here. It looks like I'm staying the night. Right? And that's part of the assessment. So now what are we going to do? We're going to create a plan, right? And creating the plan, we're going to say, okay, I'm going to make this, this, and this. These are my priorities. I'm going to make shelter. I need to secure some water because it's extremely hot out, or whichever in that sense. And at least be able to prepare to make it through the night. And that's the first one, breaking it down into smaller segments. And again, now we've got a plan. We're going to act on that. Let's get that shelter started, right? We're running out of daylight. We want to get that fire going. We're running out of daylight, right? And we know that we need a lot of firewood, for instance, to get us through that night, so that we don't have to wander around in the dark or away from the warmth of the fire. So again, that looking back to the ISOM model, of course, we're looking at it from the assessment, the planning, and the acting is going to put you in with a strong foundation to move forward, right? So I mean, talking about putting the plan together, we would develop our problem solving skills. Of course, is going to be huge. Enhancing your ability to tackle challenges by improving problem solving skills is going to be fundamental, right? Breaking those problems down into, like we said, manageable steps, and to seek out the practical solutions, slowing things down when we can, is going to be it's going to be extremely important, right? Again, if you don't have to do this by yourself, develop a strong social network, have a supportive network of people around yourself, in the sense of your social apps, for instance, social groups, even online. You can provide that if you can't get out there and find them, in real life application. If you've got a family, get them involved. That's important. You're going to give them a valuable mindset to take away with them. Resiliency certainly is something that you can have as being contagious. So make sure that everybody in your family, you love them. Then if you love them, give them that skill set, right? To send them out there without a doubt. Talking about your situation with friends and loved ones, won't make your troubles vanish, but it allows you to share feelings, receive support, brainstorm solutions. This is why we kind of originally started ISOM. It wasn't so much that we could solve the world's problems, but it would allow us to feel a little bit better of the situation we were in, because we'd say, hey, other people understand this, and maybe I've gotten some other skill sets, or I guess it's a mindset, right, that we're trying to create there for sure. So that's absolutely important. We want to create plans, again, with contingency plans, with the knowledge that you've gained for sure, right? We want to be able to embrace change, be flexible. It's absolutely essential for resiliency, is being flexible. You need to be able to adapt, improvise, and overcome, right? So again, the third trio, learning to adapt when faced with a life crisis is just absolutely fundamental. And it's going to keep you with that positive mindset. Acting on the plans with the knowledge and, again, preparedness, it allows you to learn and adapt and improvise and overcome, of course, right? So, I mean, we practice in ideal conditions, and then, we expand into having a lot more confidence, of course, and then we take that to the next level and we practice in less ideal conditions. This builds confidence, of course, and lets you know your weaknesses, where your plan needs work, gaps in the plan, if you would. And again, when we refocus that back and we redeploy that plan, the more you can practice something like that, the better. Anything you practice, you'll inherently get better at it. Some people say, I'm practicing, and then getting any better at it. Get some coaching, right? Do some more research on it and keep practicing. Don't give up, right? That's that survivor mindset. So, when the time comes to act in the real world scenario, for instance, you're going to need that confidence. That knowledge is going to come in super handy, right? Of course, with flexibility to be able to see that through. So it's absolutely huge. You're going to want to remain, focused on that one thing that needs greater attention. And again, being able to put that into your planning portion, identifying those gaps is going to be absolutely crucial. All right. So, we have to remember that resiliency is a skill set that's absolutely learned and strengthened over time. It's in us. It's already there. It's a good foundation. It's just survivability. We have it, right? It's a survivor instinct that we already have inside of us. It's a thing that allows us to understand that we need to pull back from something that we fear, right? And that's a survivor mindset. So, and it's a fundamental that we all have. Now we just need to reframe that. So it's not so much that we're going to back away from danger. It's just that we're going to back away understanding the fundamentals of what that danger actually is, what it's capable of, and how we need to prepare, educate ourselves, and to be able to use the model, like I said, to be able to assess, plan, and act, and do that with everything that we can find in our lives. We already do it. Maybe we don't even realize that we're doing it in that order, but it's happening that way. And again, it is somewhat of an order, but it's always happening. We're always reassessing. It's the same thing when we drive. We're driving down the highway, we assess the situation, we make a plan to shift lanes, we check, we get more information, we check to see if our blind spot is clear before we act on that intention and change lanes, and we do with success. So again, that's the same model. So I hope that answered the question there for Ben there, and we appreciate the question. Don't want to get too long on that podcast, but I think we've given enough there to bite into. So if you've got any questions about any podcast that we've done, and just there's an opportunity to put a voice message across. You can reach us at aninformedstateofmind@gmail.com, and you can reach us on Facebook on the group platform, and you'll also find us over on the ISOM YouTube channel as well. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, gain knowledge, maintain that knowledge, right? And never stop considering everything. So until next time, take care, folks. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Echo, did you like the show?
This has been a Rush Creek production.